Well, it's the end of May 2013, and the first thing to say is I'm in this town called Bakewell, a little market town in the north of England. It's in the county of Derbyshire, which is almost halfway up through England. In other words, it's a bit north of the middle of England. It's a small town, it's about 3,000 population, and I decided I would spend a couple of weeks here and study village English rural life, read all the papers and so on. So I rented this cottage. It's actually 3 rooms on top of each other. The bedrooms are the top 2, and the kitchen and the little lounge are downstairs with the television. This is my first day, actually. I was in town yesterday, but I didn't really look around very thoroughly. I propose to do that today. In the meantime, I'm trying to cope with a new cell phone I bought, which I can't seem to operate, but then that's nothing new. I can't seem to operate anything that's mechanical. I'm about as dumb as you can get in that area. So I think what I'll do is I'll just show you the view from when I look outside my door, and then I'll go into town and do a little run around town with the camera. This is the little room, the television over there, the couch. There's a table just to the left there, under the stairs, and the stairs lead up to the bedroom, 2 of them. Walking outside the door on what is a typical English day, i.e. it's raining. This is immediately in front. These are the hills over there. This is called the Peak District. I assume peak means hills. There's definitely a hill into town. I have to go down it very soon. You can't see town, it's just down there. Nearly every cottage up here has pretty flowers, actually including my own. And flowers in the window. And it's amazing what you can do with a really tiny little garden. Look how pretty this is, and there's really nothing much in it. It's only about 2 yards wide, if that. Anyway, maybe the nicest part of town is where the river is. I think it's the Wye. Don't ask why, it's W-Y-E. I'm not sure, I'll check that. But there's lots of swans. And lots of ducks. And this tiny kind of waterfall. Anyway, more later. Probably the most valuable place in town for me will be the Cooperative, which is a huge supermarket. And most of the houses around here where I'm living are as old as this one. 1709. I have to climb up this big hill after I go to town every day. Okay, I'm standing at the junction of a couple of streets in downtown Bakewell, and I came down to pick up my papers. Now I'm going back up home. It's a very steep hill. At the bottom of the hill here is the Rutland Arms Hotel, which is the best hotel in town, and where I come and do my Wi-Fi on my Kindle to see if I've got any emails. Jane Austen revised Pride and Prejudice while staying here, and Charles Dickens also stayed in this hotel. I've come to this little village called Ashford in the Water because they have a well dressing, which I will show you shortly. It's down this road here. Here is definitely an old sign. Apparently I've only come 2 miles from Bakewell. The buses run about every 2 hours. Well, we begin the village here with the Ashford Arms. Not exactly a huge village. Here's one of the wells, actually. This one dedicated to Martin Luther King. And when they talk about decorating them, they mean actually literally building a picture out of flower petals. This happened to have taken place this last weekend. You can see a lot of leftover petals here. Somebody arranged the garden to look like a maze, a little maze. There's another pub here. This one is called the Bull's Head. The Bull's Head. Flower petals are drifting everywhere 2 days later after they were installed. Cute place to live, I think. Here's a little tea room. And the local church around which all the activities were featured this last weekend that I didn't bother to come here. Does it date back a long time, this sheep watching thing?
Oh yes. You took a picture of me.
Why?
I don't know that.
Why do they not wash them anymore?
Well, there are different means of doing it, I presume.
Maybe
Please don't expect me to answer as I'm an expert on the village.
Thank you. The church was originally Norman, although it's been rebuilt. Well, obviously this tiny village is very popular with tourists. It goes back a long way. It was actually in the Domesday Book, which was an 11th century book about all the villages and communities in England. And it was big on lead mining right up until the last century. Also, there were lots of tiny little workshops and things like that around here. Nowadays, it's mostly a commuter village. People at work work in Bakewell or Buxton or one of the other towns hereabouts. And where I'm at is at the Sheep Wash Bridge. And originally the sheep were all brought here and washed before they were trimmed and penned. And hang on, couldn't miss all those dogs going by. So they have a ritual ceremony once a year at the Sheep Wash Bridge, in which they wash a few sheep for the benefit of visitors, mostly tourists. Unfortunately, I missed that. Maybe there's a postcard of sheep being washed, I don't know. It's a very sweet little quiet place. The village originally set up 10 centuries ago because there was actually a ford across the river, which I assume might be one of the bridges here. This is the Sheep Wash Bridge. Ducks hang out here, I suspect because visitors come by and maybe throw in the occasional piece of bread or something. Sheep Wash Bridge. The water's very shallow. I can see to the bottom. It can't be more than about a foot deep. And as you can see, it's not especially wide. This is all about the place. It says when they do the well dressing, intricate pictures are made by pressing alder cones, flower petals, moss and other natural materials onto a background. Well dressing of wet clay. Up to 5 wells are dressed for Trinity Sunday. I think that was yesterday. And lasts for about a week. Sumptuous bedrooms and luxurious bathrooms. is announced by the Riverside Hotel, where you can get afternoon tea with clotted butter and a homemade scone and coffee for £4.50. That's about $8, $7. Following the footpath in search of more wells. This is a rather elaborate one. I don't know who Joseph Paxton is, but it's the usual thing, all pressed flowers, pressed petals, pressed very tight. It isn't a well actually at this point, but still. A lot of the cottages have little colourful plaques on them. A lot of them also rent rooms. These sweet little flowers growing out of the wall. This here is the children's well. Unfortunately, it's kind of a... I wonder if it's sponsored by the Disney Channel. Some rather badly done Mickey Mouse type figures. Nevertheless, lots and lots of flowers. (2013), 30 years of the Disney Channel. How many people work on these on the wells?
Oh, quite a lot of people. They have different groups, the WI and the children, of course.
Is it always pretty much the same people that do them, or?
Yes.
I see. How long does it take to? It looks like a laborious job.
It takes a week.
A week,
They
right?
soak the boards in the river for a week.
Right.
Then they take the boards out. And then they clay the boards and transfer the picture onto the clay, and then gradually outline it and then gradually build up the picture from Saturday to Friday evening.
They can't grow all the flowers locally. They must bring them in from somewhere, right?
Oh, but they do. A lot of them
A lot of them local.
stolen from the gardens and what have you.
Here are different pictures of Ashford in the water. This really should be Ashford by the water, I suppose. Should have asked her about that. They still deliver milk in this country. Leave them outside your door. The pubs were closed because it's only 11 in the morning and they don't open till noon. So I'm sitting in the Women's Institute. Here's a lady who just brought me my tuna fish sandwich. Thank you. There's a table laden with pastries and cups of tea over there in the Women's Institute. I was just reading the booklet, and it said that they wash the sheep. They push them into the river and scrub them with a paddle, and they wash them because when they sell the sheep, if they have a clean fleece, it gets a better price. A precious and essential part of life is what they say about water. And of course, in the old days, the wells were literally that. They were where people got the water. So it's been celebrated through the centuries. So when they're getting ready to decorate the wells, they soak these boards for a week in water so they'll absorb the clay better. Then they cover them with clay and put in all the petals. And most of the flowers are donated by people who grow them in the gardens around the village. And they're pin-pricked, petal at a time, into the clay background with originally a horseshoe nail. These days more likely some kind of a thin piece of wood or stick or cocktail stick or something of that sort. Maybe even a toothpick, I don't know. Well, that was kind of cute. Morning tea in the Women's Institute. Here's some sheep. Look like they've been well washed. Hello, little baby sheep. Apparently it's a big sheep farming area around here, and always has been. I like sheep.
Good life, aren't you? She's a good one. Ooh, chickens and eggs on this one.
The good life.
Do you know what?
Here's a big sheep. And finally, here's a well devoted to Doctor Who, that long-running BBC television series. I really like the way they cram so much into these tiny little cottage gardens. Seems to be dog walking time. Every Monday in Bakewell is market day. Today happens to be Bank Holiday Monday, the last Monday in May. Sounds religious to me. And everybody's here, even the butcher.
CSA's there. Watch out, the CSA's there.
Here's a somewhat knotty tree. It's right opposite from the indoor swimming pool and also the library, but unfortunately the library's closed today. There's something that might be useful for some people to know: how to understand men through their dogs. Picked up a tiny knife and a magnifying glass here in the market. Kind of place where you can get all the things that once upon a time Woolworths used to sell. I really miss Woolworths. That flag says England on it if it ever straightens out. Bakewell pudding is very famous, and I'll tell you about it some other time. A lot of places sell it, but most of them claim to be the original. There's a fish and chip shop just over there, though. Not only is there a big line waiting, but people standing all over the place on corners eating fish and chips. They've always been this kind of people. Big crowd, of course, for a holiday, and all these people are crossing the river at the bridge here. I don't know what she or he is representing.
Sorry.
Not always, he's not as bad in the night as he is morning.
Medieval History Club, it says, beneath her podium. Lots of ducks down that part of the river. Well, it's a wet morning at the end of May, and I've just arrived at Chatsworth. Unfortunately, nothing is open yet, so I'm just passing away the time. However, I thought I would come and visit the men's room. And this is the men's room, with tiled walls, ancient pictures on them, and the urinals right below. I'm feeling a bit bedraggled because it is wet, as usual in England, and very soon I'll start my tour. Of course, it's a huge place. I'll show you from a distance later on what the house is like. This is just the entrance. It's raining like crazy. not the best kind of day to do anything outdoors, and there's 105 acres of gardens, which I have a feeling I won't be. It opens up with a dark corridor lined with pictures which are really, it's not terribly light enough to see, I don't think.
I'm going to try one of the dishes you have. I think I might try that. Because I always sit.
Huge entrance hall, yeah. Some kind of old chair. It said that the hall, said in the brochure that the hall was still basically the main room in the centre of activity today in the house. Some funny sculptured animals outside in the courtyard. And then past this huge vase here, we climb some more. Although again, high up, the ceiling is profusely decorated, and all around above the stairs are these statues. Fireplace filled with this. Here's another huge room with a decorated ceiling. I guess the main upstairs room. Green satin room, which I assume refers to the walls. Here's William III, who gave the US so much trouble, 17th century. I assume that is the current Duke of Devonshire. Here's a model of the house. Again, passing through the big room. There are huge mirrors everywhere. A spectacular fountain in the garden. The ceilings, as usual, are spectacular. This is the music room. One room leads into another all across the top. Again, the decorated ceiling. Dozens of pictures on the walls. And that's interesting. It's not a real violin. It's a trompe d'oeil, however you pronounce it. A painting of a violin made to look like a real one. Tables held up by sculptures. Lots of mirrors, lots of lamps. This is the state bedchamber, where it said it was such an honour to be summoned, even if you were only to empty the chamber pot. Kings and queens stayed in this room, which was by far the most stately bedroom in the house. Lots of cherubs around the edge of this ceiling. Another tiny room off the state bedchamber. Highly decorated with pottery, ceramics of various kinds. This room is devoted to ancient drawings. The house has 3,000 of them, most dating back to the early 18th century, and many by Rembrandt. Now we open up into two other long corridors lined with pictures and various artifacts, not to mention the chandelier. This particular gallery is dedicated to Georgiana, a lively bird who was married to the 5th Duke of Devonshire, and she ran up huge gambling debts which she kept hidden from her husband. When they were finally revealed, he said, "Is that all?" She collected minerals and stuff, many of which apparently are here in this room. A lively and vibrant woman, they said about Georgiana, portrait by Thomas Dainsborough, 1805. Incidentally, she came from the Spencer family, from which Diana descended 3 centuries later. Here's a hall full of portraits. And this picture behind me is a bit dark, but it's kind of spectacular, just because of all the people on it, all having dinner. Pass the salt. This is a guest bedroom. Would like to be a guest here. Kind of nice. 4-poster bed and everything. Some pretty old guns and swords. Hello, I wonder whose pet you are. Another guest room, a little smaller. This seems to be the library, or one of them maybe. I guess when the Duke and Devonshire have people to dinner, it's quite a show. Maybe the soup comes in there. The sculpture gallery. A lot of sculptures. Huge shop, of course, selling books and everything. The Duke's choice appear to be these furs. And as you emerge from this huge store, that's kind of the view, which is sort of nice. Now I'm at the back of the house. You walk through all of that, you can see how long it is. And back here there are gardens and fantastic greenhouses, heaven knows what. Unfortunately my battery is on the verge of running out, and like an idiot I did bring a spare one. It's raining too hard to step away and take the proper distance from the front of the house, but here it is. Distance I see a bit of the outlying. There's 105 acres of grounds here, including cultivated gardens, which I didn't see. So I'm going to wait here under this tree for a regular bus to come and take me. So there we are, folks, just as the battery dies out. Here I wait for my bus out of here. It's complicated. You have to take 2 buses to get here, and if you're lucky, a lift from somewhere.